Good afternoon and welcome to the first episode of Property Mama, Adventures in Real Estate. My name is Wendy Chamberlain. I am a buyer's advocate, a buyer's agent here in Melbourne, Australia, and I have been buying and selling real estate for 28 years. So as you could appreciate, I have seen a few things in my time when I have been dealing with real estate agents, dealing with buyers, dealing with sellers, and so through Property Mama, I'm going to reveal the curtain, pull the curtain back and show you what really goes on when it comes to buying and selling real estate, because I can tell you there are many, many shenanigans that happen. Even in the past few weeks and months, there's been quite a few things that have been going on. So I was thinking, where do I start? So I'm going to be sharing my Property Mama Adventures in Real Estate every Wednesday at 1 o'clock. So tune in if you want to find out all the bits and bobs, pieces, and a few little interesting scenarios that go on when it comes to real estate. So what adventures did we get up to in December? We had an interesting property that we purchased for a client, for our first home buying client. So what happened was we were looking for a property, and I put a phone call into a real estate agent that I know, saying, what have you got? This is our client's spec, their budget, exactly. What have you got that might suit them? And they said, well, we've just got this property, we've just listed it, it's off market, which means it's not advertised to the public. So we always love to buy stuff that's off market because it means that it hasn't been shown to anybody else. And around about 40-50% of what we buy is actually off market. So, and what that means is if you're hunting on Domain or realestate.com.au or any of the public platforms, public real estate platforms, you're missing out on half of the market. There's an entire other market that's not advertised. And we find those deals and those properties for our clients through our relationships and our connections with real estate agents. And as I said, I've been doing this for close to 3 decades, so I know quite a few agents, and we have some great relationships that we lean into when it comes to buying properties for our clients. So I rang this agent that I bought a few properties off him over the years, and I said, what have you got? And he goes, we've got this property. And this was a Friday. Property was tenanted, and we needed to make a time to get through the property and have a look at it. So, I'm thinking it was Thursday, it was Friday. It was the Friday. And I said, look, it'd be really great if we could get through on Saturday, which was the next day. He said, look, leave it with me, we'll see how we go. So he was following up the tenant a few times, and he managed the renter, and he managed to get hold of them and organise for 11 a.m. Saturday morning to go through the property. So our client was going to meet the agent on site to go through this particular property. Now, as I said, the agent had just secured this listing, and they themselves had not been through the property, which is interesting when you find out the state that the property was in. So the property was a rental, and the owner of the property was known to the real estate agent. This particular, I'm not sure why, but this particular owner had put the property on the market around about 4 or 5 months earlier with another real estate agent, and they had no success. So they had it publicly on the market and there was no success, which is probably part of the reason why they wanted to have this one off market, because then they don't have to pay for marketing costs again. Because marketing costs to put your property online, depending on the suburb, can be anywhere from around $4,000, $7,000, $8,000 upwards. So they've already had it online, had no success, didn't want to pay the marketing again, I assume. This real estate agent knew this particular seller. Not sure why they didn't go with this agent in the first place, but in any case, they had a failed campaign, and now this real estate agent was the one that was able to get this listing. And when I rang him, he said, yes, got this property, and we made the time for my client to go through the property on the Saturday at 11 a.m. All good. So client goes through the property and then rings me afterwards and said, how did you go? And he said, well, that was an interesting property. I said, why was that? He said, all the walls were black. So I go, what do you mean all the walls were black? He goes, yeah, all the walls were black and the doors were locked. So as it turns out, this property it's rented by the owner to a particular company who then sublets the property by the room to people that are on Centrelink, so on welfare. And so effectively it was people were living a house inside a house. And so each of the bedrooms had a lock on the door, and they had converted the lounge room as well into a bedroom. So it was how many bedrooms was it? It was a 3-bedroom house, and then they'd made it was a 2-bedroom house. It was 3. Anyway, they had made the lounge room into an additional bedroom. So my client has gone in, had a look at this house with the real estate agent, and really they weren't able to see much. They could walk down the corridor, went into the kitchen, which they'd painted all of the cupboards black in the kitchen as well, and had a look at the backyard, etc. And I thought that's very interesting. However, this particular property, they liked the property. They liked the location. It was the property on land. They wanted to get this house in this suburb on land. And with their budget, this was a property they could afford. They knew that he's actually a tradie, so he had the skill set to be able to fix up any issues with the property. And they had friends living in the area, and they really liked this particular property. So I said, well, are you wanting to buy it? And he said, yes, I'd like to go ahead and make an offer. So I ring the real estate agent, and this is where it was funny, because the real estate agent was so apologetic and sheepish, and I hadn't said anything about wanting to buy the property. He said, I'm so sorry, I had no idea it was in that state. That's the first time we've seen it. They literally just got the keys. They got the keys on the Friday, and this was the first time he himself had been through the property as well. And I saw the property later, and it was in a state. Yes, it was in a state. And he was like, I'm so very sorry. We'll have to make sure that we get it cleaned up before we show it to anybody else. And when I finished, I listened to him, and I finished, let him finish speaking. And I said, we want to buy the property. He's like, what? I said, we want to buy the property. He's like, oh, okay. But because of the state of the property that had all these, so it was in a fixed lease, so month to month, actually, not a fixed lease, a month to month. So this particular person that was renting the property was taking out 3-year leases, and so the most current 3-year lease had expired. So the person that owned the property had purchased it to renovate, but they decided for their own circumstances that they weren't going to do that, and they were just going to move the property on. That's why it was coming back onto the market. And they'd had this failed campaign about 4 or 5 months earlier, and with no success, having paid the marketing, and now they're looking to sell this property. And so I said, we want to buy the property, but it was off market. So when you're buying something that's off market, you need to put certain clauses in to protect your interests of your client, of the buyer. So because when something is off market, there's often no contract available yet because it hasn't been prepared. So we put in a condition subject to solicitor review of the contract. We also did it subject to a building and pest inspection, because when our client went through at 11 o'clock on the Saturday, they weren't actually able to see any of the property other than the hallway. As I said, the bathroom was to the right, and then the kitchen, and then the outside area, etc. And the house needs work. It needed work. They saw that. And so we always suggest to our clients they buy property subject to building and pest. You would be astounded how many times we pull out of property purchases based on building and pest. And it doesn't matter if a property is brand new or 100 years old. They can have problems. Well, I worked with a first home buyer client in 2022, and we hunted for 11 months because six properties, so six properties failed the building and pest inspection. And now when it comes to looking at building and pest inspections with properties, that comes down to the risk appetite of the purchaser. It comes down to their skill set, their available time, their cash flow. Are they willing to take on what others may see a problem? They might be okay to work with it. So examples there were literally the chimney was falling off the wall of one of the houses. There was what else? There was drainage issues. There was underpinning issues. There was a bunch of things. Property we ended up buying, it was an older home, and I think there were some minor leaks detected in the bathroom, but they were happy to take that on, and we did buy them a home. But it took that long because we also 3 of the off markets that we found. So that particular client, their adventure as a first home buyer over those 11 months, 6 failed building and pest, and 3 we found off market, and the vendors woke up in the morning and decided they didn't want to sell. So we'd seen the property, loved it, we're going to buy it, and then they wake up. And that was back in, like I said, 2022. And in May of 2022 here in Australia, that's when the interest rate rises, the most recent set of interest rate rises started. And that particular vendor, it was a week, I remember it was the 22nd of May because it was a week before the next set of rate rises, like a March or whenever it was. And they were a bit nervous. So it took a little while. So we always suggest getting building and pest inspection for that reason. And given that our client hadn't been able to see inside of the rooms of the bedrooms, because they each had literally a lock and a padlock on the bedrooms and on the lounge room, and they had closed off the walkway between what was the lounge room and the kitchen. So as you walked in, you had the lounge on your left, and that was locked. And then they blocked off the gap between the kitchen and the lounge when you walk through that way. So I also added a clause that it was subject to our building inspector inspecting the property and being able to see inside of all of these locked rooms, and also that it was to our satisfaction, building a pest to our satisfaction. A standard clause that is in Victorian contracts here in Melbourne, Victoria, they have a general condition for building and for pest, and it's major structural defect, and there can be a bit of argy-bargy about exactly what that means, etc. So we do like and often, like basically 99% of the time, we get our clause through, which is subject to the purchaser's satisfaction. So we organise, and that we had to have that within the 3 days. This was the Saturday, and so it had to be done within 3 days. And so I'd spoken to our building inspector, and he was able to get out there inside of that time, which was great. So we organised for the Tuesday. And so the agent was under the pump then, because he had to get access. He had to get all these basically subtenants, the occupiers of the rooms, to allow their doors to be open and for us to have a look inside the property, and the inspector to go into all of the rooms and inspect all the property as well. And that was a term of the contract. An additional term, because my clients are first home buyers that are looking to occupy the property, there was a month-to-month tenancy in place. So you can do it subject to vacant possession with enough notification on your settlement period to have the existing tenants vacate and then have it vacant and ready for you to take possession as vacant possession. So there was a few moving parts on this one, as you can appreciate, which is it's what I do. It's what I do. It's what I love to do. And it's how we, when you're working with a buyer's advocate, there's always a lot of moving parts. On any deal that you're putting together, there are a lot of moving parts. You need to know what the moving parts are, how to put them together, and the order in which these moving parts need to all act. So we had it subject to solicitor review, as I said, subject to building and pest, subject to an inspector getting through the property and inspecting it and getting access to the areas, subject to vacant possession as well. And that was all within a time frame of around about 3 days that we put on the contract. And I think we did about an 80-day settlement. Generally, you usually do 65 days notice to vacate under Victorian law is what you have to provide, 60 days plus 5 days for postage. Things are electronic now, so the 5 days is still there. So you give 65 days. So generally when we're looking to vacate a tenant, a renter out of a property that we're purchasing, usually doing 70 days, but I just put a buffer of 80 days given we're dealing with a pretty unique scenario in this situation, as it turns out. And that came into play, which I'll share with you in a little bit. So the tenants were given contacted by the real estate agent that we needed to get access on the Tuesday. We had to tee this up also with our building inspector being available and our clients being available to get through the property, because one of my clients was working, as I said, he's a tradie, and he was working miles away from where he was living and had to travel every single day. So we had to make that time plus get the inspector through at the same time. So we organised it for, I think it was 4 o'clock on the Tuesday. All good. So the agent had to get it sorted. I was saying to the agent, what's going to work for you? He said, just get yourself organised. We'll make it work. He was going to organise and work out what needed to happen with the renters. That's fine. So just before 4 o'clock on the Tuesday, I went on site to meet with my clients because they were very nervous about going there by themselves, given the scenario that we had in front of us. So the agent met me there. No one else had arrived at that point, and the renters were there on site. They were at the outside the house, inside the property, and inside the property boundary. And the agent just walked up and just explained everything to the renters. I was just waiting, and he said, "Do you want me to wait with you until the building inspector comes?" I said, "Yes, please," because I didn't want to be there by myself either. And my tenants had messaged me because they were stuck in traffic and they're running behind time. All fine. So I waited there, and then the building inspector came. And so I went in with the building inspector, and I was just having a chat to the renters. Now, I can appreciate that when you're renting, look, we've rented before. We know that when you don't own a property, you don't control what happens with a property. And so what was happening here, obviously, for this renter, there was 3 of them. Actually, I think 4 people, the mum, the daughter, another guy, and then another guy living there. So they're all going to have to find new accommodation. And so it's a tricky scenario. So basically, they're each living in a room inside a house. So their house was the room inside the main house. So I was just chatting to them, giving them some. The guy, he was asking me questions about what was happening, etc. And I said, well, we're just looking at the property and subject to passing the building and pest inspection. I explained that I was a buyer's advocate. I wasn't the real estate agent, that our client was interested in buying the property. And we had the inspector here, and he was looking. Now, there was another lady there, the mum, the older lady was there now. She was not happy about us being there, being in her house. I appreciate all that. I'm always very respectful because it is their home. And yes, we're coming in to purchase the home, but it is their home. And so she was cussing and she was swearing, saying how it was a pretty crap situation. And I said, yeah, it wasn't ideal, obviously, for them. And she was following the building inspector around, sticking to him like glue and telling him all about all these defects and problems and things with this. Because clearly she was trying to get people to be put off buying the property. Now, the property did have a lot of problems insofar as, so I walk in and I was actually pleasantly surprised. Yes, it was painted black, but it was the architraves and skirts and the doors were painted black. The walls were still white, actually. The kitchen was all black. They had painted all of the cupboards black. And I had a bit of a giggle to myself because the property needed a lot of work. It was in pretty original condition. And the tenant was, like I said, she was cussing and cursing. And she's saying, oh, can't believe it. We fix up the property and then they kick us out. And I'm thinking, what did you fix up? Because I can't see anything that you've fixed up here. The property needs a lot of work, a lot of renovation. But she was not angry. She was really angry. And like really, she was going off a rocker. So my clients arrived. So I've gone out the front to meet with them, and I've covered them in sage and tea tree just for protection of going in this particular property, and a bit of on guard as well, actually. So they were very happy about that. So we've gone in, and they could feel the energy of this place. Like, she was really not happy having anybody in the property. They're walking through, and even though the doors were open, they were kind of stepping on the edge of the hallway and not going into the rooms, kind of peering into the bedrooms without walking in, because they didn't feel comfortable going into the rooms, because the people were all there. The people living in the home were still there, and the lady was making it extraordinarily clear that she didn't want anybody there. And she was slamming things and huffing and puffing and running around. And so my clients, we had a look at the property, and it was like, oh, sorry, excuse me. And there was a guy in one of the bedrooms just sitting on the bed, another guy. And had a look at the property, and we're in the backyard. Now, the guy that I'd originally spoken to at the start, he's following me around, and he's doing the whole subtle thing, as in we're standing in the backyard having it, and he's coming out and he's raking the leaves, and he's just, casually pottering around close enough, you could basically feel the wind off his ears flapping. It was listening to what we were saying. So that was interesting in itself. So we're standing in the backyard, and I've said to my clients, do you want to, And then next thing we're standing talking, and then the woman's come out, she's looked at us and she's like this and she's walked off. I said to my clients, do you want to go and have a look at the property again, or do you just want to go out the front and have a chat? And my clients they didn't want to go back in the house with the people there. They were being made to feel very uncomfortable and not welcome at all. And they said, no, let's go out the front. So we went out to the front of the property. We're standing on the footpath. Next thing, the guy appears and he's brushing the driveway because all of a sudden you need to do gardening when clearly you've done no gardening. By the state of the property. So funny. So we went up around the corner. We disappeared around the corner to have a conversation. And my clients liked the property. They still like the property, which is great because, as I said, it's in the right location, not put off by any of the clearly the problems. The building report showed there were holes in the roof, that the tiles had shifted, and because the tenant was saying how, I get all this water in there, and there's all these major structural defects. So there were major structural defects because holes in your roof are, and the bathroom was leaking as well. So the property was built, it was one of your typical 1960s with the triple fronted layout on it, and it hadn't been renovated in probably its entire life. So yeah, it's an older property, and the leaks in the bathroom were considered a major structural defect. That's fine. So, but that didn't put my clients off at all. So anyway, we're chatting away. Next thing, the building inspector, he's finished his inspection. He comes around the corner to chat to us, and he's having a bit of a giggle and a laugh. And we're going, what's happening? And he said, well, he put his drone up to take photos of the roof because they have got a camera on it. He puts his drone up. And he said the tenant threw a beer bottle. She threw a beer bottle at the drone to try and take the drone down. Interesting. So that's the first time that's happened. So tell us you're not happy with it being there. So, yeah, so he's having a bit of a giggle about that. Report came through. Our client was happy to proceed. And so that's all fine. So then that starts enacting all the clauses in the contract. So we'd sent the solicitor the contract to review. That came back. That was fine. We managed to get through on the Tuesday because we had one further day on our 3-day clause about the building and pest inspection and getting access, which they'd managed to accommodate for us. And then the last thing they needed to do was provide the notice to vacate by the Thursday. So this is the Tuesday. By the Thursday, the notice to vacate on the renters, because that we had our timeline to meet on getting our settlement. We needed vacant possession for our settlement. So Thursday rolls around, and I message the solicitor and I say, have you received the notice to vacate from the real estate agent? And she says, no, I haven't. She's like, I'll flick something off now. Okay. And next thing comes back saying, no, they haven't done it. I go, what do you mean they haven't done it? And then it was the Thursday, I think, and so they had till the Friday, the Thursday to do it, and it was Friday. And I said, where is it? They need to do it. And she said, well, they said they haven't done it. So then next thing, the agent jumps on the phone, and he says, because basically they're in breach of contract now. So if you haven't met the stipulated clauses that are in a contract, we can exit the contract because you are in breach. You haven't met your side of the bargain. Your conditions haven't been met, or our conditions that you agreed to have not been met. And the agent rings me. He says, you're going to have to give me more time. And I'm thinking, I've got a settlement here that we've got. Remember I said earlier, something told me to put 80 days instead of our normal 70 days. He goes, because the real estate agent, so as I said earlier, the vendor had appointed another real estate agent to sell the property about 4 months earlier, and they had no success with that. That particular agent was also the rental manager. So this new sales agent was not the rental manager, which meant the rental and management of the renters in the property was still being managed by the old agency, who was the old selling agency. They clearly got their nose out of joint and cracked the wobbly, because he said the old agency are refusing to issue notice to vacate. I go, what do you mean they're refusing issuing notice to vacate? You know what's funny about this is that the owner of the property has appointed the rental manager, so you are working for the owner of the property, and the owner of the property has asked you to do something and you're saying no. Well, hang on a minute, they're paying you to do the job. You've got to do the job. And because they've cracked the wobblies, cracked their shits about the fact that the property got taken off them from a sale perspective, the rental manager, that agency, has refused to issue notice to vacate. I'm like, oh, dearie me. And he said, and refused to give them anything. And so the vendor, the owner of the property, he said, they're going down to that agency today, this afternoon, on the Friday afternoon, to collect all the paperwork because the rental manager is refusing to give everything over to them. And they're changing the agency to the new selling agent. And I'm thinking, they're paying you to do the job. And I'm sure you have still been taking your monthly payment, that when you rent out a property and use a professional rental manager, you pay them a fee, depending on, it's like 5.5, 6.5%, depending on who it is, where it is, the relationship, whatever it is. I'm sure you've been taking your money to manage the renter, but you're not now listening and doing what basically your boss or the person you work for wants you to do. I'm like, blows my mind. So the owners had to go down to this old rental agency, grab the file and give it to the new selling agent. And then they, on the Monday, he said, you got to give me till Monday. We're going to get the file and then we're going to issue notice to vacate on Monday. I'm like, okay. So that takes us from the condition being the Tuesday. We inspected the property Tuesday. They had to give notice to vacate on the Thursday. That's not happening now till Monday because there's a weekend in the middle, right? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. 5 days later, they did manage to issue the notice to vacate on the Monday, take over the file on the Monday and issue notice to vacate on the Tuesday. So what are we talking? 6 days later. So my 70 days, 80 days, thankfully, kind of had the wherewithal to think about, this is a more of a complex situation when we've got multiple people living in the one property. And at the time I thought, who knows what is going to go on? So the normal standard practice is you give them 65 days notice to vacate. They exit the property. They have to do an exit clean, a professional exit clean. And then the property is inspected by the rental manager, given the all clear, and then we're good to go for settlement. And then mix into that, that's the standard when someone leaves a rental. This is what you have to do when you're leaving a rental. Mix into that the fact that we then do a final inspection on the property. So generally we like to do those around about a week before, because if something is not right or something has been moved or shifted or taken away, because the general rule is that if you need a screwdriver to remove it, it stays on site, but all the other stuff, and we all have stuff that we accumulate when you live in a property, has to be gone. And we've seen all kinds of stuff like gates and timber and like all kinds of like old barbecues, people's just junk stuff. They often will take off and leave it. No, you have to get rid of it. And this house is no different. There's all stuff all over the place. So there's that factor as well. And so that's why we like to give a little bit of a time. Now, generally you can't stop a settlement. They have to go through, but you can, in certain circumstances, withhold money for rubbish removal. All parties have to agree. It goes through the solicitors, but that takes time. And so that's why we like to do it a little bit earlier to allow that time. And given this scenario was one of the trickiest ones that I saw going in, we gave ourselves a little bit more time. So as it turns out, we have about a week from when the notice was issued for when they're going to vacate. We have about a week or so that which is going to allow for them to do the clean, do the final inspection by the rental manager, and then we can organise our inspection to go through and see the state of the property. So that's pretty yes. I don't know. I've been doing this a while. I just had that feeling about this particular deal. And in addition to that, the building inspection report showed that there were quite some gaps on the roof. So some repointing was needed. So over time, the tiles on the roof had shifted and the gaps allow water to get in. And so there was some leakage in the eaves at the front of the property. It wasn't actually in the property, like inside the house as such. It was in the eaves. So I just spoke to the real estate agent. I said, can you, because we don't own the property for another 80 days. So the vendor can do whatever they want or don't want with the property. But because this had been flagged, and just to kind of put a prevent any further damage to the property, I asked the real estate agent, can you get somebody to go up and just sort out the roof tiles? And they did, which is great. And they just did some patching up there on those roof tiles and sorted that out, which is great. So we're just proceeding through now to settlement. I think settlement is maybe a couple of weeks away now. We're just organising the final inspection at the moment, which will happen next week, and then settlement will happen maybe it's not a couple of weeks, maybe it's a week and a half or so. Time flies. That was a December purchase. So that would track. That would track for the timeline. So there you go. That's just some of the adventures that we have in real estate. Yeah, so over the years, I have been taking notes of lots and lots of different things that go on. And so that's what I wanted to share with you through Property Mama, Adventures in Real Estate, because I've seen some things and you think, really? Do you know your lips are moving when you're saying that? Or shouldn't that have been an inside thought? Yeah, interesting. Across everybody. I've seen it from sellers, from buyers, real estate agents. They're our own little category of wonderful, let me tell you. I love working with great real estate agents, and there are some fabulous real estate agents. And unfortunately for the great real estate agents, or the ones that are really good at their job, there are enough of the folks that give the industry a bad reputation, shall we say. Oh, it's funny. I was just thinking about what the topics. I'm going to pick a new topic every week to talk about, and I'll look at my notes. This one that's top of mind because it was something that happened in December last week. We purchased a property that took, I don't know, it was a December auction, and we've been negotiating all of that time, and we finally got it under contract and buying that property. That was as of Tuesday last week. So that took how many months to do that? It's probably my longest negotiation. This kind of stuff happens. And yeah, and when I was thinking about one to talk about, there was a really funny one. We were selling a property for a client. We're selling the property for the client. And, what goes on in people's minds? Because once an agent's been appointed, they're the ones that anybody, if they've introduced a buyer to the property, well, then they're going to be paid their commission. That's just how it works. And this vendor client started doing all these shenanigans, which were basically ways that they could get out of having to pay the real estate agent. And they got found out because somebody that they probably didn't even think would be listening to what they were saying overheard a conversation they were having and said, hey, did you know, blah, blah, blah. So that was interesting. So I'll cover that one in the next topic. The things people do. Then on the auction day, they'd obviously got into the brandy really early in the day, shall we say. But there you go. So every Wednesday, 1 o'clock, we're going to jump on here and share adventures in real estate. Lots of fun stories to share. 1 o'clock Melbourne time, which at the moment we're in daylight saving, so just check your local area. And it'll be on our YouTube, on our Facebook, and also on our Instagram channel here for your listening pleasure. And if you've got any questions about real estate, about buying properties, selling properties, any burning questions, anything you want to ask, just pop them in the comments area or get in touch. Our website, if you want to find out more about what we do, is chamberlainadvocates.com.au. We've got all the socials there as well. and just get in touch if you want to give us a call, 03 9686 2288. Go old style on the phone. That still works as well. And really look forward to finding out more about what your questions are in relation to real estate. What are your burning questions? What would you really love to find out about the world of real estate? What are you not sure about? What are you nervous about? What stresses you out when it comes to buying or selling a property? Send me your questions and I'll be happy to answer them and help. And see you next time on a Wednesday, 1 o'clock. Property Mama, Adventures in Real Estate. Bye for now.